While you were on the trail, day 4?
Day 3.
Day 3?
Yeah.
You got norovirus.
I did.
I just...
Can you imagine? That is like the worst place to get norovirus. Literally, I would rather, that is when I'd be like, call it, pull the plug.
I actually don't know how I would have coped. I would have been like, do we have a helicopter
So
on call?
Literally,
Wasn't it like
so I
15 grand or
won going into it. I knew, so I had the tour company comes with like medical insurance, but then on top of that, I got like my own also, which if like you need it, airlifts you off the mountain. So I was like in the back of my head this whole time, I like know that if I get injured, I can get like a helicopter off this mountain to a hospital. So like it is nice knowing that because you know you're in the middle of nowhere.
That's very helpful.
That's really smart, yeah.
And like nice that like I know my insurance would cover that. But yeah, so when I got to Nairobi the first day and Zoe's family was all still at the wedding, she texted me and was like, hey, I just want to let you know my entire family, they were at the wedding for a whole week before. It was like a whole week of activities. My whole family got norovirus. It's gone through us like throughout the week. Like we all got it at different times. So like when we come back tonight, like just wear a mask. We're all going to wear a mask and like kind of keep our distance. Like I'm so sorry, but like we do not want to get you sick. And most of them had recovered. A couple people were like still getting sick because it just hit everyone at different points in the week. And so I see them all that night, but I'm like not like, and it was COVID, so I was like, we know how to social distance,
Yeah,
like very easy.
So so I had a ton of masks. So we all were wearing masks, and like I like said hi to our family, but I didn't like hang out with them that much. And then we were leaving the next morning anyway. So, and Brendan and Zoe had it at the beginning of that last week, so they had like 4 or 5 days since they had been sick. So, but I still was like keeping my distance a little. But then the next day we're sitting on a plane together. So you can only do so much. But like, again, it had been 4 or 5 days. And usually that's like
enough.
A quick like incubation time, I feel like. So, yeah. So then we get to Moshi, which is like a town at the bottom of Kilimanjaro. And at this point, so I've been like with them all day. We traveled there. We got there. Our tour company picks us up from the airport, so that was great.
That's wonderful.
Do they have hotels for you to stay in when you're...
Yeah, so you stay in a hotel the night before, and then we did 2 nights after, mostly because of COVID testing. We wanted to make sure we could get a test, because we had a test in between like every country.
Got it. Okay.
And we were going back to Kenya before going home. So we had a test to get into Kenya, and then we had a test again to get back in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
So that was just an annoying process.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Can only imagine.
But yes, there's a hotel you stay in, which is nice and they have like full showers and hot water and
Love that.
But yeah, so we had been together for a while, but like I said, they had like norovirus earlier. So we thought I was totally in the clear. We weren't expecting me to get it at all. We were like, oh, great. Like, I'm not going to get it. Perfect. We're going to start our hike. I wasn't even thinking about it. The first 2 days were beautiful. Like, I was so happy. The hiking was like so enjoyable. The weather, we got great weather. Like, it was sunny, but like not too hot. It was so nice. The views were amazing. And then the third morning I wake up and I'm like, my stomach's pretty off. I did not eat the hot dogs that morning because I was like, I can't do it. My stomach's
like,
already off. I did the hot dogs the last 2 days. I can't do the hot dog in the morning, but I eat my eggs. And I'm like, I don't know. Like maybe it's just the morning, like after 2 days of hiking. As we're hiking, and then he tells us we're going to this place where we're going to stop for lunch, and like they'll have lunch ready for us. And I was like, amazing. They do everything. And like my stomach's just getting worse and worse. And I'm like, oh God, like, but I'm still not thinking like that's like norovirus. I'm like, oh, I'm just like a little off today. Like maybe like I ate something. And at lunch, I have like, oh my God, I feel so like awful. Like I am so nauseous. My body is like, I'm like sweating. I'm just like
scariest.
I just feel so bad. And then we eat lunch. I like ate a little bit, and we're hiking like further to go to our campsite, and our guide turns around and like I think he could tell like I had been off all day because I just like wasn't as like talkative. I was like not myself. And he looks at me and he's like, you don't look good. Like, is something wrong? I was like, I really need to throw up, but like I don't want you to send me home. And he was like, I'm not gonna send you home.
Oh my God.
He was like, you can go.
You're like holding it down.
I'm like, don't send me home.
Yeah.
And he's like, you can go throw up. I'm like, okay. And I like go find this giant rock, throw up behind this rock. And I'm like, oh, I feel so much better. Amazing. That was it. Like, I'm good to go. Let's go. Got my energy back.
This is my worst nightmare.
And then we like continue hiking and I'm like, oh God, not again. And then it was just like the whole way back to the campsite. Like probably like every like 15 minutes. I was like,
puked.
Yep.
Every 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yep. But it was like controlled enough that I could like go walk away and do it. It wasn't like.
But that is just awful. But then it continued into the night, right?
Yeah. So then we get back to the campsite and like my body's just like shutting down. Like I could tell it was like not. And I kept trying to drink water so that I was so worried I was going to get like dehydrated. And then I just like kept throwing up my water. And so then I'm like just panicking about being dehydrated. But I packed all these like liquid IVs and like rehydration salts and all these things, so I'm like putting that in my water, trying to like stay as hydrated as I can, but it's like every like 15 to 20 minutes I just throw it all up again.
Oh my God.
And I have like stuff for to settle my stomach, but it was like I couldn't keep anything down, so like even any of like the pills I took like wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I go like right into my tent, thank God, like they had the tent set up for me already. So I go right into my tent and they're like, oh yeah, you guys change and like we'll have dinner. And I just go to Zoe and Brendan like, no way I can have dinner. And I'm in my tent and the dinner tent is like right next to my tent. And I'm like, no, well, like not that was not the problem. More that I kept throwing up and was like, oh my God, I hope I'm not ruining their dinner.
Oh
like they couldn't hear me at all. I asked them next day.
Okay,
I was
good.
like, wow. They were like, you were throwing up? I was like, what?
Yeah.
You were like all night, actually.
But the worst part was I'm like in a tent and like, where do you throw up in a tent?
Yeah.
So luckily I had packed all of my clothes in like, I was very organized and like Ziploc bags and like the giant like gallon sized Ziploc bags. I had packed like each outfit in a different one so I could easily like pick my outfit for the day. So I'm like going through the tent and I'm like ripping things out of the Ziploc bags and I'm like literally throwing up into my Ziploc bag. And then I was like, I don't want to run out of these. So then I just like throw up on top of my one already in the Ziploc bag. And I was like, this is the lowest point of my life.
How awful.
I'm horrified.
So that
poor
was,
thing.
and I was just like, I had a horrible fever. I was sweating. And that was that was all night until like 3 or 4 a.m. And then finally, then at like 6 a.m. they tap on. And the whole night, I'm just like, there's no way I can like hike tomorrow. There's no way I can keep going. Like, I don't even know if this is going to end. And like, I'm so dehydrated. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Right. What do I tell them in the morning? So they knock on my tent. And I'm like, so I was throwing up, but I haven't thrown up in the last 2 hours. Like, I'm kind of okay, but like I was throwing up the entire night. Like I haven't kept any water down. Like, what do you want me to do? And he was like, we'll give you to 6:45. Get ready. And I was like, oh, okay. Guess where you are going. And he was like, we'll carry your like day pack today. And I was like, okay. So we get up and Zoe and Brendan wake up and they're like, oh, Jess, are you feeling any better? And I was like, no, I was throwing up all night. And they were like, what? We didn't hear you. And I was like, how? I was in a tent.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. They were like, how did you know?
I was like, your tent was right next to me. I was like, oh, glad I didn't ruin your dinner. I was really worried about it.
You're so considerate.
So they were really worried once I had told them, and they were like, are you sure you can keep going? And I was like, well, like, I can't go back either. Like, that sounds just as bad. I was like, hiking back doesn't sound any better. And like, I'd rather keep going forward, I guess. Right. And like, I haven't thrown up, but like, I still feel awful, but like, I'm not like a deep nauseous anymore. So like, let's go. So they carry my bag and they're like, oh, don't worry today. Like, it's a shorter hike today. It's only 3 miles. And I'm like, oh, great. Like, they're like, it won't be a problem at all. Like, you'll be fine. We walk out of the camp. I look up. We have to go straight up this cliff. Literally like rock climbing up this cliff. Oh. And I'm like,
your body's
I
like
turn
frail,
around to the
like...
guide and I was like, I thought you said today was an easy day.
Yeah.
And he was like, just go. And we're going up this
ruthless.
cliff for so long. And it was one of those cliffs where you like think like you kind of see the top and you're like, oh, like that's the top right there. And then you get there and it's like just went in a little and then it keeps going up.
No. Oh,
You're like 3 miles vertical.
Yeah. And this
Perfect.
wall was like so awful. But I was just like, I just need to get like just to the next part. I was just trying to think of like what was right in front of me. And I was like, I can't think about the rest. Like I just can't. And I can't think about the fact that I have 4 more days.
Oh,
I was like,
my God.